In the year 19XX, the evil crime syndicate Zed was reduced to rubble by the powers of stealth possessed by the Shinobi master, Joe Musashi. It seemed as if the world had returned to peace. But 3 years later, the world was once again swallowed in darkness. Zed had returned. With an incredible increase in power much greater than before, Neo-Zed became the strongest crime organization ever to exist. After establishing their mighty crime empire, Neo-Zed turned their efforts towards destroying the threat posed by those who possessed the powers of stealth. All of the followers of the power of stealth were attacked and their chief was killed. The chief, with his dying breath, told Musashi that Naoko, his bride-to-be, had been taken hostage by the Neo-Zed, so to get revenge for his comrades and bring back Naoko, Musashi set out for the heart of Neo-Zed. Now you see, that's how you do an opening. Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Play The Revenge of the Shinobi. Notable, different from Revenge of the Shinobi, the subtitle of not only Shadow Dancer on Genesis, but also technically on Master System, at least on the box. Starting off, we are closer to Shinobi 1 territory here in that we actually have a health bar. But starting off, we also have some completely new mechanics. For instance, we have multiple ninjutsus. For instance, one I'm using right now, Fushin, which allows us to double jump super high. In fact, the double jump is a completely new function for the game as well. Notable though, it is more or less going to be a thing in every game moving forward, but the double jump in this series works a little bit odd in that it's very specific with how you have to time it. You have to press the jump button again at more or less the exact apex of your jump, otherwise you're not double jumping. Otherwise, by and large, the gameplay is pretty much the same. You throw the shurikens with one button, you get up close, you can swipe with your swords and all that. You can find power-ups in the stage to increase the damage of your shuriken and your sword, because usually a kunai you're attacking with otherwise. But the power-ups in this series in this game, do actively go away when you get hit, at least enough. However, you also want to be careful because boxes which contain power-ups sometimes don't contain power-ups at all, and instead contain bombs that will explode after a few seconds. I think the timer actively does move faster the closer you are to the bomb in question. As for the other ninjutsus we have that are on the top, there is, I think, Ikazuchi, which is the lightning bolt, which is temporary invincibility. I forget the name of the red one, but it's a screen nuke. And Mijin, which is the one on the far right. Don't use Mijin unless you are feeling super risky. Because Mijin, you sacrifice a life to do a screen nuke. It is a little bit interesting in one usage, though, in that you can technically use it to restore your health, while also doing mass damage to anything on screen. That is a legitimate strategy some people use for boss fights, and I use for certain boss fights later on in the series, less so here. Now, the biggest change from the first two games that you can see on screen, though, getting into it a little bit later than most of the other mechanic changes, you now have limited shurikens. Now, enemies and boxes will drop shurikens instead. I believe it's that one shuriken pickup is 5, and I think a double shuriken is 20? Sometimes it's 50. Depends on the game, really. I think 20 is what it is on average, though. So your game becomes figuring out when you want to throw a shuriken versus trying to get close to the enemy and using your close range attacks. Though there are notably, I think, 2 particular modes you can do for more or less every game of the series moving forward, where you can either trigger infinite shurikens by using a cheat code, or just have no shurikens and go only for close range. You can also fire multiple shurikens at once with a double jump. However, as you would expect, it does take up all the shurikens you use in it, which I think is like 8. This is also the first game to start hiding power-ups in the stages themselves, not in boxes. There are certain places that if you just attack randomly throughout the stage, they will drop guaranteed power-ups. So sometimes it's a double shuriken, sometimes it's a 1-up, sometimes it's a health restore, all that kind of shit. And there are notably 2 different types of health restoration in Shinobi moving forward. Small hearts, which do, I think, about 2 health points on the health bar, and big hearts, which are more or less full restores. Now, you may notice I didn't get hit by that last Shuriken. I forget if this is the game that introduced it. I'll have to look into the manual to figure it out, because I don't remember if it is. But some Shinobi games moving forward also have a blocking mechanic where if you hold the attack button, you'll be in a block stance. I know that's in Shinobi 3 and Legions, but those are the only 2 I ever actively remember it in, because if you don't do it for certain boss fights, you're just gonna die. Straight up. With that, though, we're already coming up on the first boss fight, who is actually a very familiar one from 2 videos ago. We're more or less refighting Lobster from Shinobi 1. In fact, I think the manual even calls him that, except now he's blue. He works very similarly. His sword is blocking his weak point, which is his head, unless he's actively attacking, so you need to do a little bit of a bait and switch. Get close to him, but then jump out of the way and fire behind you at his head in order to damage him. Or you can use Karyu, that's the name of the red ninjutsu attack in this game, to at least do damage. You can tell whenever a boss's health is getting low because every boss in the game slowly turns red as they take more damage. So you at least have a good visual cue on how you're doing on the boss fights. Also, I should note, like prior Shinobi games, I almost said Ninja Gaiden, you have limited ninjutsu. You can tell you're out of ninjutsu power for a stage when the border around at least one of the ninjutsus is no longer red. You can find extra charges for those in the stages, but usually they're hidden items not actively shown off. Alright, and stage 2 is where the platforming comes in full force. And by and large, Revenge of the Shinobi onwards in terms of game control are closer to Shinobi 1, but better. We no longer are super dedicated to our jumps, as you can see. I reverse direction there, no problem. The problem is, the platforming still can be awkward in this series moving forward from time to time because of the way the double jump works. Because there are times where you need to jump with, look at these logs, for instance. Scrolling platforms, but if you don't have the double jump mastered with timing, you're still gonna die. Additionally, there will be some platforms that are so far away that you need to do a double jump, and if you're not good at that timing, well, you're not beating the game, aren't you? And the game does have a few cases of instant death obstacles causing problems. Usually bottomless pits, admittedly in this game in particular. This stage and stage 6, I think in particular, are the ones I'm thinking of. Now, the name of the game, by and large, because of how many enemies have projectile attacks, is to use your Shurikens as much as possible, but I should repeat my advice from Shinobi 1 and Shadow Dancer here. If you approach the game at not a snail's pace, but a slow enough pace that you never need to worry about enemies, you can get enough close-range attacks in, partnered with the boxes you find, that you'll have a huge stock of Shurikens by and large, especially if you know where to find the hidden Shuriken drops like this, of course. Yeah, that's 50. Good lord. Now, ooh, yeah, that's why you want to be careful with boxes, because bombs explode super quick when you're on top of them. Now, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because we're in the second half of the stage now. You want to stick on the high route here because there's a lot of bottomless pits below. If you are photosensitive, seizures or otherwise, look away during the boss fight. In fact, I forget there's a stage select code. I'll look into it right now. Just don't play the game because the boss fight of stage 2 takes place in a dance rave club of sorts. And it flickers so much it makes my eyes start to hurt a little bit. And it's annoying. And here we go. Look away. Because, oh boy. Meet the Shadow Dancer. This guy loves jumping and throwing his shurikens either high, low, or when he's jumping, usually just to directly hit you whichever form you can. To start, he actually doesn't take damage, you're instead knocking away his little shadow clothes from behind him. But acts basically as a secondary health bar, thankfully. once you get rid of all of his little clones, I believe his pattern changes to be a bit more aggressive, if memory serves. And you need to also be careful when he actively jumps, because there are times where he'll jump up and throw 4 shurikens like that, or he'll stop short just to try and land on you. If you're photosensitive, you can now look back, the boss is killed. That stage, the first half can be a little bit iffy with the logs. The second half's not much of a problem as long as you take the high route. With that said, that boss fight is actually honestly really hard. I don't like it. Now, this is the first instance of something that's the closest equivalent to what we had back in Shinobi 1 and Shadow Dancer. Shinobi games moving forward don't usually have the double layer thing, where, say, there's a top and bottom layer where you need to rescue hostages. But in this stage, there are 2 layers, a foreground and a background, blocked off by the fence in the center of the screen. You shift layers whenever you double jump, so make sure you keep an eye on whether or not enemies are in front or behind the fence, so that you don't accidentally walk yourself into a trap and take a lot of damage. A somewhat effective strategy I've tried a couple times in this stage, outside of obviously taking my time, is to just constantly flip-flop, because usually the enemies take a second to realize you're there and start actively targeting you. But there are other times where that doesn't work. I don't know how you're supposed to get that ninjutsu, rather, without a super specific jump, by the way, because that is up there. Also, beware the dogs in this stage, because they move surprisingly fast compared to the rest of the enemies in the game, in that they kind of move forward in general. And because of that, they can surprise you, similar to the wolf enemies in Polar Knight's stage in Shovel Knight. An annoying thing as well about this game in terms of how it damages you, and this is kind of a thing for the series moving forward now that I think about it. Whenever you see an explosion, the main explosion itself is a hitbox as long as it's on screen, as are most of its offshoots. So you need to make sure you have a healthy berth between you and the actual explosive. Okay, so now we're on a plane. That entire stage, I think, was supposed to be like a military base moving towards a plane. My only advice for this stage, don't stand in front of the doors, the airlocks, because those do open when you get too close to them, and you will get sucked out of it, and it is instant kill. And that sucks. Okay, yeah, I looked it up. The first stage is Ibaraki Province. District 2 was Tokyo. District 3, the current stage, is the military base. The next stage is Detroit. What? Well, that's a transition. Now, something very minor that the game kind of does a piss-poor job of highlighting outside of the manual. If you look at my health bar, it is now actively longer than it was at the start of the game. The game actually kind of has an experience system where for every 100,000 points, you gain 2 extra health points. And similarly, for every, I think, 50k points, you get an extra life. Because of this, it's recommendable kill absolutely everything, because it's the only way you'll ever have a health bar worth a damn by the end of the game, because the final bosses, they can do some damage pretty quickly, sometimes 3 or 4 health at a time, so be careful. With that, though, we're coming up on the boss of stage 3. This is some sort of weird computer in a almost some sort of weird cache or vault. It has 2 of Eggman's lasers from Flying Battery Zone, though, and that really sucks because they constantly track into you. My recommendation is, if you have at least 2 ninjutsu, is use Karui here, because it'll damage the brain that we need to damage in the center when the little door opens. Eventually it does retreat back in, though, and while you can get some physical attacks in if you're super close to it, this fight is honestly pretty rough because it's not only limited vulnerability, but being near the door hurts you, the lasers hurt you. This fight can be a whole bunch of back and forth trying to avoid things, and I just prefer to bring in some extra ninjutsu and go hammer on it as much as I can before I die, essentially, as you can see by my pitifully low health right now. Alright, looking around, I actually was wrong. There's not a stage select for this game, but the infinite Shuriken cheat code is to go into the options screen move the pointer 2 shurikens and set them to 0 and wait about 30 seconds without touching the controller. At that point, a sound should play and the 0 should change into an infinity. So if you want to go through and just go ham firing every which direction, you can. Now, on the score tally screen, you might notice there's a couple of particular bonuses. I think it's like technical, perfect, and there's a third one that's like special. In order to get the special bonus, which I think is 30,000 points, you need to end a stage with 11 times as many shurikens as you have lives. So I would need 77 shurikens at the end of this stage. That's never worth going for, honestly, in my eyes, because you should always just keep a save up. Technical bonus, I think, is beating a boss either without getting hit or without using ninjutsu. I forget which. Whereas I think perfect bonus is getting through a stage without getting hit, period. Which, yeah, good luck with that in a Shinobi game, I'll be frank with you. These games, I'd say there's only maybe 3 easy Shinobi games, at least out of the classic Shinobis before the 3D action game on PS2. I forget if Shinobi 3D was easy. And those, we'll get to those games later. Now, a useful note and tidbit about these flamethrower enemies, because their flames reach far. They are also idiots, and they will walk into walls close to them. And when that happens, the fire gets completely blocked by whatever enemy or whatever wall is in front of them. So you can just take the opportunity to stroll right up to the front of them and kick them in the face to death. Because you want to make sure you still use physical attacks as often as possible. As while they don't have the range, they're still more powerful than any of your shurikens, even powered up. Hell, that's why you get the sword instead of a kunai. Now, right here is a very important little power-up. There's a hidden one up there that you can just barely cheat to get by holding right at the right moment. You might have noticed though, that didn't give me 1 extra life, that gave me 2. If you want to get as many extra lives as you need for the rest of the game, in the case you're super paranoid about that kind of thing, that power-up respawns every time you die, so you can just grab it, die, be net 1 life, and do that again, and again, and again, and again. There's a reason one of the later Shinobi games, despite its relative difficulty, has a unique display for when you're at 10 or more lives where it says that you're at greater than 9. These games are hard, but if you know where to look, by experimenting around or looking at guides, should you be the case, you can get a lot of lives to at least make things easier. And since the Mijin spell is a pretty consistent thing moving forward, you can do that pretty consistently. Just you do a health restore before certain boss fights. With that said, we are coming up on the boss at this stage, because I'm kind of skipping about a third of this room just by going over here. The boss at this stage is the Master Attacker, who is an Arnold Schwarzenegger during the peak of his career looking kind of guy. He will dash across the screen after erecting a little bit of a barrier, and he has 2 different projectile attacks, one where he throws a car and one where he throws a block. The car is too big to dodge by running away, but the block he throws high, and thus you can just stand next to him. As you can see, though, if you know his pattern well enough, he doesn't really get much of a chance to do anything. And oh my god, speaking of Terminator. Well, that was disturbing. Yeah, since I think I got the technical bonus for beating that without taking a hit. Or without using ninjutsu, rather. So now my health is 2 units higher, but with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, the rest of the game. These games aren't exactly long, even in their longest occurrence, so I doubt many of them will be longer than 3 parts. Well, maybe 3 games might be longer than 3. We'll see. See you guys then.